Welcome to the True Demon Lord Show. I am the True Demon Lord, Franklin McDonald, and today we take a deep dive into all things Khorne as we focus on the Blood God and all of his very angry minions. So, we're going to be talking about how best to run each of these units in a mono god setting. So, we're going to be doing this for all of the gods, but we are starting with the Blood God himself, Khorne. And this is all about how can you get the most competitively and casually out of a list dedicated solely to just Khorne. So we won't be talking about any other god units here. We won't be talking into what you can add in from other gods here because that will be a whole different focus. This is just how best to run a list in the current index that is just focused solely on Khorne units. So I mean, let's start with the strength. So Khorne lists and Khorne units, very good mid to high strength with quite good combat, quite good damage across the board. Even your basic troops and your bloodletters are strength 5 with 2 damage with -2, which is pretty good on your basic troops. Your bloodthirsters strength 16 -4 D6 plus 2 damage on the big axes. Even Scarbrand strength 16 -4 6 damage. Your blood crushers, while having the same profile as the Bloodletters, strength 6 -1 damage with Lance on the horns for their Juggernauts as well. So, you know, that's the gimmick here, right? It's all about combat. It's all about going in and doing the max amount by punching someone straight in the face. So there are some pretty good combat synergies as well, which we will get on into in a bit. But the Bloodthirster and Scarbrand both provide nice buffs around for the rest of the smaller demons. Of course, we've got Ren Masters, which are also fantastic with their stackable abilities, but we'll delve more into that later on. And then on your more elite and your elite units and your greater demons, the really important units of your list, they're pretty tough. Like your blood crushers are tough for 7 with 4 wounds and a 4 up inbun. Your blood thirsters and Scarbrand toughness 11, 4 plus inbun, and 18 wounds or 20 wounds on Scarbrand. So your most important units have a fair bit of toughness on them and are not just easy to pick up. Obviously, going into the weaknesses, your battle line units are fairly squishy. T4, 1 wound, 5 up invuln. Even flesh hounds, T4, 2 wounds, 5 up invuln. So things like bolters or that kind of equivalent can definitely pick them up. Unfortunately, a problem that a lot of corn stuff has is low amount of attacks. While the Bloodthirster does have 7, the lack of rerolls does hurt there. But your bloodletters and your riders on your juggernauts all have like 2 attacks each, which is not great on a unit on an army that really does its damage primarily and like mostly in combat. Even your flesh hounds, though 3 attacks isn't terrible. Strength 5 -1 damage kind of pulls that down a bit. And then your hardest hitting units, your Bloodthirster, your Scarbrand, your Blood Crushers, are all slowed by terrain since you're mounted on monsters. Most of those are on like the Bloodthirsters on the big oval base. The Blood Crushers are on like your large cavalry oval bases as well. So with a 10 and 12-inch movement, while a bit of speed, do have to obviously take into account I have to move around terrain and that. So some of the weaknesses there, going into the best synergies and buffs though. So what we were alluding to at the start of the video, we have Ren Masters. Ren Masters are one of the best units in the game. In the index for us in the game, and of course, Ren Masters have their Blood Throne ability, which is at the start of the fight phase. They pick one enemy unit that is within 18 inches of them and visible, and any Khorne unit that targets that unit in that fight phase gets +1 to their strength, AP, and damage of all their melee weapons. So that really ups the damage potential there. The other good thing is this is an ability that isn't an aura nor gives that a named ability, so therefore it does stack. So you can get up to +3 strength, AP, and damage on a single target. You can spread these out. You can stack a couple. Maybe if you have 3, you can stack 2 of them and still point one out somewhere else. So this definitely helps. Again, you do your damage where you primarily do your damage. So making your bloodletters strength 6, strength 7, strength 8. The same with the riders on the blood crushers. Even the blood crushers at strength 7, strength 8, strength 9 with lance. Pretty nice. Again, like a lot of your damage is really damage 2 plus on your bloodletters and that kind of stuff. So making them damage 3, 4, 5, even flesh hounds to 2, 3, 4 really ups their damage as well. And then also just means that though the blood thirsters do struggle without rerolls, being able to just up their damage, so strength 16, 17, 18, 19, And then APs for days, already AP4, so you're cutting through pretty much every armor save in the game. And then making him D6 plus 2 damage, D6 plus 3 damage, D6 plus 4 damage, or D6 plus 5 damage. Pretty insane. So the Ring Masters, if you're building a corn list, you're definitely taking out at least one, probably two. You can go three as well if you really want to and really maximize the damage. But I think two is a nice number because you've still got to get them in their positions. And yes, we have a lot of ways to kind of move them about the board without having to just move them. Um, you do need to have them in the right positions. So being able to take two of them still gives you the ability to stack while also spreading the buff if needed. So we have Scarbrand, and Scarbrand on his own, pretty good. Flat damage is really nice. But what does he give for the rest of your units? So he has a 6-inch aura of +1 attack for all non-vehicle, non-monster units. So it's a shame that this doesn't affect monsters or vehicles. It really is, because it would help him or the Bloodthirster out, or even Soul Grinders. But it's still really good. It makes your Bloodletters 3 attacks. It makes the Riders on the Blood Crushers 3 attacks. It makes your Dogs 4 attacks. If you're taking a lot of Blood Crushers, those 2 attacks on for the Riders on top, um, it is a bit naff, to be honest. But getting them to 3 attacks are quite nice. Then you start adding in the Master buff, so some really nice combination there. You really want the units that he's given his buff to really have the Master buffs as well, especially if you're sticking them. So yeah, +1 attack, always good. Just a shame it is limited to non-vehicle, non-monster corn units. Nonetheless, your blood crushers are probably your biggest damage dealers overall. So definitely, being able to affect the riders on them is pretty good. Just remember, it doesn't affect the bladed horns for the juggernaut itself because they are an extra attack, and you can never modify the attacks characteristic for an extra attack ability. So, or an extra attack weapon. Sorry. Then we have the bloodthirster. So you have the bloodthirster, big angry corn demon. And he has an aura of a 6-inch aura of +1 to hit for all corn demon units. So the good thing is this isn't locked to certain units. This affects everyone. So it means if anyone is -1 to hit, he's still benefiting from it. He still gets his +1, so he's still going to be hitting on twos. Once he takes his bracket, when he gets to 6 or less wounds, he's still +1 to hit, so he's hitting on twos. Making your bloodletters or your blood crushers hit on twos is pretty good. Making your bladed horns on your juggernauts hit on threes now is really good as well, especially considering you can have the skull masters in your blood crusher units as well, giving the bladed horns devastating wounds. So being able to hit on threes at strength, 6, 7, 8, or 9 with lance and dev wounds and multiple damage 1, 2, 3, or 4, um, really starts to stack up, that damage and makes the blood crushers pretty much walk through almost anything really in the game. And it just ups your damage potential. More hits is always good. Then we hit the skull cannon. So though I don't highly rate the skull cannons, they can definitely help out in a corner list. First of all, they can give you some shooting, which you like heavy on. And while it's not great, it's better than nothing, and it's not bad. Like you'll pick up like marine or marine equivalent style profiles, even chipping into lighter armored vehicles or weaker monsters. But the thing you really want here is anytime they hit a unit, that unit then has to take a battle shock test, and if they fail, they are battle shocked. So this is pretty good because the direct attack stratagem, which again we'll get into in a bit, it gives you +1 AP. But the other thing it does is it allows the unit you've used it on to re-roll wound rolls against battle shocked units. So being able to go, you really need to target a certain unit down. So you're hitting them with your skull cannons, then you're charging your blood crushers in, or even your bloodthirster, and now you proc this for the extra AP, whether you need it or not. With your Ren Masters and already fairly good AP, probably not. But really, what you're using it for is the reroll wounds, which for 1 CP is still really, really good. Especially on the bladed horns on the blood crushers. If they've got the Skullmaster in there giving them devastating wounds, fishing for those devastating wounds is pretty good. So the other thing as well, obviously, it will then turn the unit to 0 AC. This is pretty good if you need to score certain secondaries, such as being able to get cleanse or secure no man's land, etc., etc. So though not the best profile in the world, that ability to be able to cause the battle shocks and make you a bit better in combat while also helping you with the objective play, because Khorne does struggle with trying to contest objectives as far as like just loading up units on there because you're just charging in. So you're really relying on your blood crushers or your bloodthirst to go in and kind of kill the units off the objectives. This just helps double down on that. And even if you aren't trying to get the reroll wounds from Drought of Terror. Just labeling a couple of skull cannons around to again restrict your opponent's primary, so you don't have to go over there and deal with them because obviously you haven't got a lot of ranged um damage to put out, so you kind of limited to where you're going to be charging. So it's quite nice to have. So, of course, the most important thing in this game is scoring points. Primary and secondary. So, obviously, we have two ways to score secondaries. You can either go tactical, so you draw your cards every turn, two a turn, or you go fixed and you just pick two cards and just go with it. So, as far as scoring goes, we have Flesh Hounds, which I think are probably one of our best scorers overall in the index. 70 points for 5, 2 wound, toughness 4 models with a 12-inch move that are beasts that can move through walls, and your standard 5-up demon in one. So they are OC1, and they've only got 3 attacks to strength 5 -1/1 damage, though they can pick on small outlier units. So being able to move into generally a lot of units that tend to scout forward, they can kind of run into them, do enough damage that they can kind of contest or take the objective, which is quite nice. They're very good for early game scoring. That 12-inch movement is really nice. It allows them to cleanse or get you engaged if you've got that, whether through your cards or as a set secondary. Um, and like I said, with the 12-inch movement, and also remember with cleanse, whether again you're taking it as a fixed secondary or as a tactical. With cleanse, which I guess a lot of people don't really realize, is one unit can cleanse on multiple objectives. So obviously you're kept at two objectives anyway, but due to the wording, one unit can perform the cleanse action, and because they're on both objectives, you will score for both objectives. So a unit of 5 Flesh Hounds just moving 12 forward, good for body blocking as well, which is nice. Being able to get you those points on multiple objectives for say cleanse, or even just attempt to target, etc., or secure no man's land and all that kind of stuff. So it's really nice. Um, also pretty good for getting your early shadows up if you can get your dogs out, um, being able to get on those middle objectives, forcing your opponents to have to deal with them. So yeah, so overall, Flesh Hounds are going to be your point scorers, really, that you're using them to kind of go out, do your early game scoring, the more menial jobs that you don't want to be wasting on like blood crushers and stuff like that. But again, cheap enough to use as screens and body blockers as well, which is quite nice. Then we go into Blood Crushers. The Blood Crushers decent at scoring points for denying secondaries and as also denying primaries. I mean, also gaining new primary. Being able to run into something and kind of clear it off the objective, and then being toughness 7 with a 4-up and 1 and 4 wins apiece. Not the easiest to remove, so they're quite good for flipping objectives. Um, and then scoring secondaries like overwhelming force and being able to have enough power to kill something on an objective. So blood crushes again you're going to see in a lot of Khorne lists. I think 2 units of 6 is fine. I think 3 units of 6 is a bit overkill, especially on a lot of terrain sets. um Maybe 2 units of 6 and unit of 3, but the problem is unit of three's damage is quite lacking. But even just to have as a thing to be able to just hit into lighter units, be able to then contest, being 2 OC each is quite nice. So yeah, so your blood crushers, they're kind of the bread and butter of your corn list, really. So they do a lot of your primary denial and potentially scoring as well. Then we have your Bloodthirster. I guess we can kind of include Scarbrand in this as well. So the Bloodthirster is obviously fast with the 12-inch movement and fly. Scarbrand slightly less because he's only got the 8-inch movement and hasn't got fly. But both are OC5 and both have pretty good damage. The Bloodthirster is D6 plus 2 damage, 7 attacks, 8 with Argath, 9 in the shadows with Argath, strength 16 -4. So he's going to be winning a lot of things on threes and twos. Pretty much everything on threes and twos with that -1 to wound. Um, and Scarbrand again, strength 16 and -4, but he's flat 6 damage, which is pretty good. Both do have sweet profiles. The Blood Dice is definitely better at strength 10 -2, 2 damage instead of strength 8 -1, 2 damage. And both get like 14 attacks, 15, 16, depending on Argath, and 16 for Scarbrand. But it allows them to kind of, again, go in for something like Overwhelming Force or Secure Nomad's Land, etc., being able to clear even like multi-model units off an objective. But they're also what you kind of want for if you're planning on taking fixed and assassinate or bring it down could maybe be an option, or just having the option to be able to score them decently if you're taking tactical as well, because a Bloodthirster going in using the core stratagem to be able to give him precision, so now he can pick up characters within units, and most small characters that are sitting in units he will kill. To be fair, um, but then also, those tough vehicles, your Blood Crushers can definitely do it with their mortal wounds plus, their combat with Grandmaster buffs. But the Bloodthirster, doesn't really need the buffs. He can kind of go in himself, and most of the time should pick up most standard vehicles and that. He will struggle against 4-up invuns, as anything in the game can do, depending on how your opponent rolls. But, him and the Bloodthirster are generally quite good for your big killing secondaries, but also dealing with those big damage threats as well. So moving into the stratagems you're going to want to be using. So we have 6 pretty decent stratagems, all have their different uses, but there are probably 3 that you really want to look into when running your Khorne list. So we have Warp Surge, which is your advancing charge if the unit you use it on in the charge phase is currently within the Shadows of Chaos. So that's obviously really good. Advancing charge is always good, it gets you a bit of extra movement. It can turn a 9-inch charge into a 6 or a 7-inch charge or even less, which swings it massively. And then on units like Blood Crushers, they've got a 10-inch movement, so giving them an additional D6 movement is pretty nice. You've got no shooting, so you don't care about losing out on that. And then get +1 the charge as well because of their instrument, so really good on them. And Bloodthirsters and Scarbrand, the base on the Bloodthirster makes him a bit clunky sometimes. So again, to get a little bit of extra movement on him is pretty nice. Scarbrand, though, is on that standard 100 mil base, so a lot easier to move than the big oval base. 8-inch movement does hurt a bit, so again, another D6 movement is pretty nice. I wish we had a way to get this on multiple units, but still being able to get it on one unit is really nice. It's also not terrible to use instead of Ram Master because again, he's pretty good in combat. He rerolls wounds against the characters and heals heals himself when he kills characters. But something else, he's potentially getting a further charge on him, which may give him a bit more line of sight on the board to be able to pick his blood throne targets as well. So always keep in mind the obvious use for this is to charge closer with something you want to punch something with, but maybe use it for a bit more movement as well. Being able to advance and charge with the Ren Master, being able to get him into somewhere where he may not be able to get in, which then maybe gives him, if you want another unit that you may want to put on to help your Blood Crushers or Bloodthirster or Bloodletters or whatever. So remember that while this is definitely good to help your combat units get in, use it as well for a little bit of extra movement if you really need it. So just yeah, it's very good for multiple uses, so it's quite nice. Then we have Dratterra. Dratterra we alluded to earlier, +1 AP and reroll wound rolls against battle shocked units. So being able to use the Skullmaster's, not the Skull. Well, I mean, yes, the Skullmaster's ability where he charges in with a unit of Blood Crushers, and then every unit his unit is now in engagement range with must take a battle shock test. So this is really nice. It's not just one, it's multiple. So the Blood Crushers are very good at charging multiple units at once, being able to charge a couple units, be able to have one guy within engagement range of one unit, use him to do all your mortal wounds on your impact hits against them, and then hook the battle shock the other unit. And also remember, while in the Shadows of Chaos, your opponent is -1 to battle shock, and they will also take D3 mortals should they fail. So the reroll wounds definitely ups your damage, especially on your blood crushers, like we said earlier, being able to fish for those mortals on your horns with your with Skullmaster in, but then just also making sure you get more wounds through because obviously that's the most important thing. Um, but then the other way to get your battle shocks off as well, obviously, is the skull panel that we alluded to earlier as well. And this is really good on blood crushers, flesh hounds, bloodletters. Your blood crushers are already -2 and -1. Bloodletters -2, flesh hounds -1. You're up in the AP potentially with Renmasters as well. So this also either takes you know, either helps your unit without the Ren Masters kind of do a little bit more damage, or even if you put Ren Master buffs on and you're already at -2 or -3 with the Ren Master buffs, and your opponent's on a 2-up save or a 3-up save, being able to either knock them to a 6-up or just cut straight through their armor, this is a good way to make sure that extra damage does go through. And then we've got probably the best stratagem we have, which is Realm of Chaos, and that's your uppy downy strat. You pick one unit at the end of your opponent's turn, or 2 units if both units are within your Shadows of Chaos. You remove them from the board, bring them back down in your next movement phase. So obviously it's always going to be good, especially if you've already got shadows up in the middle, so you can get those 6-inch charges. Bloodthirster, Scarbrand, it allows them to kind of go in, deal with a threat, and then normally when one of your big combat units or one of your big damage dealers goes into, say, a flank and has to deal with something, your opponent can either move their stuff away so they don't have to worry about it later or until later on in the game, or even just move, block, or screen you. This just allows you to get around that. It makes it harder for your opponent to really isolate those units. Again, same with the blood crushes, especially if a 9-inch charge might even be better than having to move them around terrain and getting an 11-inch charger or no charge at all. So this just allows you to keep yourself in the game, especially since Blood Crushers and Bloodletters as well get +1 to charge because they're instruments. So an 8-inch charge better than a 9-inch charge. Um, though I said we are focusing on lists that are just solely focused here on Khorne. I mean, it would be bad not to mention Be'lakor if you did want to add Be'lakor in. I mean, I guess he is undivided, so having him in here isn't terrible. Being able to take him because Be'lakor is pretty good with all of his abilities, combat and that less so, and obviously he doesn't benefit from your Runmaster stuff. But being able to use him to then always get your 6-inch deep strike by landing within 6 of him is obviously another very viable strategy here. So and then let's go into an example list. So I was going to create an example list, and I thought, well, someone I know already had a pretty good list that done pretty well. So this is Kevin Leonard's list. Attending Adepticon must be over a month ago now, I would think. And he ended up finishing fourth of 257 players, going 6-1. So really, really solid display from Kevin there. Kevin is a solid, great player. Probably one of the best Demon players in the US. Um, so what was his list? He was running Be'lakor, like we just said. Be'lakor is still really good. Stopping your stuff from being shot early, which for a combat enemy is pretty good, and also giving you the shadow bubble to be able to up and down him or run him forward and up and down everything else around him. So that's quite nice. He had a single Master, so he didn't lean too heavy into the stackable. Well, he didn't go into the stackable buffs at all. He just took the one set of buffs, but yeah, one run master still ups your damage quite nicely. Tekken 2 is also pretty good, but yeah, he took 3 Skullmasters, so that kind of gives away the other part of the list. But 3 Skullmasters with 3 into 6 Blood Crushers. That means all of his units will have devs on their bladed horns. All of them are doing 7d6 at full strength, seven potential 7d3 mortal wounds. Rolling 7d6, and on every 4+ you're doing d3 mortals. And then also doing battle shots across the board. This list is very focused heavily on the battle shots, as you'll see. He's got 3 into 5 flesh hounds, quite nice for screening, holding objectives, and doing his menial secondary scoring and all that kind of stuff. 3 skull cannons, as we said earlier, very good for forcing battle shots and giving some range damage to a list that otherwise lacks it. So Kiva's list here is very focused on trying to battle shock the opponent and take full advantage of, just being able to take objectives freely, as well as being able to use things like Grimace Terror to give them the reroll wounds. Also very good against, all custodians where they could fight, get to fight first while on objectives, but also stops key combat units from using really good stratagems against your combat units as well. So this list is very much designed to disrupt your opponent's force, run in, smash it down, and then just keep going. And with 18 Blood Crushers on, you know, terrain is very dependent over here. We have a lot of UKTC terrain. Um, so they can be a bit hampered on that. I find 18 on that is a bit too much. But on player place terrain, which a lot of the US does, to my knowledge anyway, this definitely, you can play around that. So 18 Blood Crushers definitely has a bit more play there. So overall, it's a really cool list, and definitely a good example to run. Not something I would say is pick up and play because you're still lacking some units. Every unit here means something. Your 6 Blood Crusher units are your hammers. Be'lakor keeps them safe for a bit, allows them to get into certain spots that they need to be. The Master is upping your damage nicely here. The Skullmasters are helping your Blood Crushers do that extra damage as well. Um, Skull Cannons, again, they're giving you that bit of range threat rather than letting your opponent just move around the board unthreatened. And your Flash Hound's good for screening, good for move blocking, good for secondary scoring. So overall, very solid list, very solid display. And yeah, so it's a very good example of a type of list to go with. Um, I like it. I mean, I'm not much of a Khorne person, and I'm kind of staying away from it for a bit. I find it a bit boring for my own play style. But if I was going to run a Khorne focus list, it would be very similar to this. I would probably change it up just so Kevin doesn't tell me I'm copying him. But yeah, it's a very good list. So overall, though we are struggling a little bit because obviously we've got no god specific detachments, we are running solely on the Demon Conversion. So running a Khorne or a god focused list, while you're getting more of those units to benefit from more god specific buffs, you're not really getting any overarching benefits for doing so. But saying that, we all have our favourite gods. We all want to run themes. We all want to shake it up. And there's nothing cooler, though a mixed demon list is very cool. Seeing a list dedicated to one god, definitely good. For me personally, Khorne isn't my cup of tea. I'm like a very long, loyal demon player like myself. Of course, loves Khorne. Um, but we'll all be getting to something that gets me a bit more excited later on in this little mini series. So overall, Khorne has some definite power. I think as a mono god, Khorne probably has the most powerful lists you can run. Definitely the best combos. We didn't even touch everything in here. Bloodletters, I don't really rate bloodletters that highly, but 1 unit of bloodletters with a bloodmaster in to give them +1 to wound and a 6-inch consolidation is pretty nice. We have already focused on that in the battle line focus, so we can kind of pull away from that. But I mean, you can definitely run a unit of bloodletters in here and not feel too bad about it. Just remembering they are pretty squishy, so they are very much one and done generally. Um, but yeah, I mean, Bloodthirsters are pretty good. Blood Crushers are very, very good. Ren Masters are pretty insane. Flesh Hounds are just great all round units. So, yeah. So if you enjoyed watching, please leave a like and subscribe. It's very much appreciated. It helps me to continue doing this. Um, just showing your support, and yeah, it's very much appreciated. Please check out the Facebook and the Instagram as well. True Demon Lord, of course. That way you can keep up to date with all my uploads, as well as all my cool hobby progress, all my pictures of my cool demons, and being able to keep up with my tournament progress as well, attending events almost weekly. Though we will be taking a bit of a break for a bit to do some more outside of life stuff because man, there's more to life than just toy soldiers. But I do still attend a lot of events, and that's a way to keep up with it and see my progress at those events. Please check out Caster, awesome models, third party, great demons, Herald style models, battle line units, just really awesome high quality resin sculpts. I use quite a few myself, so they are really amazing for any true demon collector. And then please go check out 6 Plus Plus. I've recently appeared on their State of Play Chaos Demons video, so please check that out, where I ramble on with the lowest of men, Tom, as we talk about demons, my experience with them, and what they mean to me as a faction, just talking about them in general. Um, and just check out all their other videos, awesome videos, great content, some pretty useful and very good competitive stuff on there, as well as some pretty satire, funny videos. So thank you for tuning in, and I will catch you all in the next one.